Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the podcast. This week, we're going to be interviewing John from Floppy Dog Films. He is an independent filmmaker mostly. He's done some commercial work in the past as well. And it's an interesting chat. We mainly talk about some of the logistical challenges that can go into creating some independent films and that kind of thing. But I hope you guys are still going to take some value from this episode. And if you would like not to miss next week's episode, I'll be uploading a brand new episode every single Monday at 6 p.m. on the channel. So thank you so much for joining me once again, and I hope you guys enjoy this interview, and I'll see you very, very soon. And one little parting note before I go into the interview, I would really, really appreciate you subscribe if you do enjoy this kind of content and get value from it. It really, really helps the channel to grow, and I really, really appreciate everyone who has joined the channel in the last couple of weeks. So thank you so much for the support, guys. I'm going to stop talking now and I'm going to let John introduce himself a little bit more. So thank you so much for joining us once again, and enjoy the interview. I'll see you very, very soon.
Yeah, sure. Well, my name is John Peters. I've been a filmmaker for about 10 years. And that's mainly my film. It's independent films, working with local people mainly, and I've done quite a bit of work down Cornwall way as well with independent filmmaking.
So you're more of, from my understanding at least, a kind of more traditional filmmaker in the respect to where you work and how you work and what you actually want to work. Is that correct?
Yes, that's very much so. Didn't necessarily start off that way. Started off by doing wedding videos and doing some sort of more corporate stuff. But the real passion is independent filmmaking.
How did you start kind of getting into the independent filmmaking space? Because I can imagine there's a lot of people who are looking to get in that space who are listening who may not necessarily know what building blocks they can specifically, look to do or the connections they're going to need to really start getting into that industry.
Well, my journey there really was I bought myself a little Panasonic video camera and started doing some stuff, started doing some wedding videos. And I thought, well, I really would like some more input from professionals. So I joined the club, Bournemouth Video Club, and met some people there and started doing small little projects with them to learn the craft. And from that, I got a recommendation that someone was looking for another camera person for a project. And that's how I started. I went along to Hard Road Films and been with them ever since. And that's been some years. And we've been doing quite a few independent little shorts. And so that's how I actually started.
You said earlier that you started with more commercial-based filmmaking. I imagine there's also going to be a group of people who would love to do, independent short films, as you said before, but they may not necessarily see that as a way to pay their bills, if that makes sense.
It's absolutely no way to pay your bills. It's a lot of time, a lot of effort, and no money. But it ticks my box for creativity and also working with very talented people that are out there.
Have you found that you've been able to use stuff that you took from the commercial space into indie filmmaking or vice versa? In the respect to your skill sets, in the respect to some of your connections possibly?
Skill sets, I would say very much time management. Independent and commercial, they all think you can do Hollywood stuff in a couple of minutes. And so pre-planning and making the client aware that this is no overnight job. You have to plan your lighting, your sound, and then how long an edit's going to take. So bringing that to let people realise what's actually involved in doing any sort of filming is very important. Managing people's expectations is maybe what I'm talking about.
No, definitely. I found that as well. I think that if you're kind of very clear with the expectations from the start, then you won't run into sticky situations when things are delayed or there's a problem within a production or etc. as well. I personally found that as well. I think that's really good to hear from your side as well, because for me, I kind of get into my own bubble in the respect to, right, this is how I do things. And partly the reason why I wanted to do the podcast long term was to really talk to other filmmakers to see where the crossover is. So it's not just kind of just me in my own bubble, and this is how I kind of work in that respect. For someone who's looking to specifically get into commercial based work and they're not necessarily as interested in the indie or the indie the indie film market, would you give them any advice to look to really get into commercials?
I personally found that difficult for the constraints on it, and also I got to be honest, my passion wasn't 100% there; it was elsewhere. And being as I didn't need to do that for a living at the time, it was not high priority. Although the commercial stuff I did do, I enjoyed. Although saying that, the wedding side is just a minefield. There's so much responsibility, and it's all a one tank. And to produce something that the couple or the people that are paying for it really enjoy at the end, it is a big responsibility. It's quite nerve wracking. Although so you make something you hope to their taste, but the proof of the pudding is when they sit down and watch it. I had to leave the room and let them see what it was like, and thankfully it's always been very positive. But it is a hard job, I think, doing weddings. I do my best to stay clear of that now because I don't want that hassle.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I have a lot of respect for wedding filmmakers just simply because of the amount of stress and the amount of one takes that are in a wedding that you can't necessarily redo. So you need to make sure you get them the first time. I think that's really, really important as well. But moving a little bit back to you and what you do a little bit more now, have you seen that? Because at the moment we're in, kind of unprecedented times in respect to the pandemic and things locking down. In that respect, have you seen there be much effect on your business because of the lockdown?
Well, obviously we had some projects planned for over this period, which we've not been able to do. But we've been working on other projects. We're actually going to be doing show reels for actors, and so we've been putting together some scripts, short scripts, and sending them out to actors for them to peruse and decide on which ones they want to do. So we've been doing a lot of pre-planning. I'm hoping that we can get to actually do some filming later in the year. So it's been very good for that. And also there's always the administration side of things, like looking at your website, your own show reel, and looking at your storage capacity with all these hundreds of files and everything, start sorting them out because they can get a bit jumbled unless you're very well organised. This period of time has given you a great time to sort that side of stuff out, and to be looking at your own equipment, making sure that's all okay and working and documenting it. So all those little jobs that you always leave forever, been a great time for that.
No, definitely. I think that's really important because I think that a lot of people sometimes when they're very, very busy will neglect some of the, really important aspects like file management, like, having a show roll up to date, etc. Especially those things that when you start getting to the point with new clients or getting to the point with, potential new clients, there's going to be a point where that client asks, oh, can I see some of your work? Right. And I think that if you have necessarily kind of an outdated show reel or not necessarily stuff with your latest work, you're not necessarily showing your best, forefront. And I think that's very important. So, yeah, I mean, very, very similar in the respect of what I've been doing as well. I mean, that was a lot of what I started lockdown with was making sure that the content I had that I could show to clients was the newest, the shiniest, the best that I can physically do at the time as well. I think that a lot of people are going to use this time to really reflect on what they want to do specifically as well. So not even necessarily filmmakers, but I think that the overall, why am I doing my 9 to 5? Why am I at that job? Why am I, I've had this business idea forever, but why have I not done it? For those people who may be looking to start a new business, or specifically maybe, looking to go out on their own, do you have any advice from your own experience that you can sort of give them to help them sort of, because it is a very scary thing to do and it can be very challenging to do as well?
Personally, I think it's all about contacts. Build up your contacts, not only through other people that do video work, because you know you do need to call on them for their expertise, and sometimes they're as a second camera, or for a piece of kit you just haven't got and you want to borrow. With me also is keeping in contact with other actors, people I've worked with, because they go on other projects, and that's another way into more work. So I would say get yourself out there and try to network as much as possible, because it's your web.
Is there anything that you've been doing, specifically networking links now, that people can do? Because for obvious reasons, that's going to be quite difficult to build those connections.
Well, obviously, I've been contacting, as I say, other filmmakers and other actors, and just catching up on some people I haven't talked to for a couple of years, seeing where they're at, what they're doing, what projects they've got planned coming up, seeing if there's any openings there for me, and keeping my name out there, showing that I'm interested and available for work.
No, definitely. I think that's really important. I think that also kind of leads into my next question as well, which was going to be, do you have a specific action plan for when things can go back to quote unquote normal? In that respect, do you have like for example, I have videos I really, really want to shoot that I can't right now, for example, that they're planned and ready to go. So I just need to, wait until I can do that. In that respect, do you have anything that you
well, we finished off filming a feature beginning of this year called Perrin. That's Hard Rock Films and Floppy Dog Films, and so I'm in the middle of editing that. So I'm hoping to actually have that fully edited and then start entering that into film festivals to get feedback and hopefully win some awards, and then push it further on commercially. And we have some, as I say, we've got these showreel side of things to be planning and filming into the new year. And there's a couple of other, there's a music video down in London, and a couple of other shorts that I'm going to be doing this year. I'm hoping for more, but everyone's holding off because we just don't know when we can actually start filming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, that was my next follow-up question was, have you found that your clients are, for obvious reasons, very hesitant to specifically, start shooting? Is it more of a logistical thing, or do you think it's also a more budget-oriented question as well?
Budget, where I'm concerned, it's more of when we can start doing it. When we know we can start shooting from such a date, then you can start putting the logistics into place. Because it's always a nightmare of getting people there and everything else. So that takes planning, and you can't start planning until you get a date when we can start shooting. So as soon as we have that, then things can start progressing quite fast, because everybody's eager. So we start working again.
No, definitely. I think that's going to be an interesting time in some ways as well, because I think there's going to be this kind of kept up or cooped up creativity as well. So when you are back on a job, there'll be a lot more kind of, you won't be, because I know, I don't know whether you feel the same in some ways as well, but sometimes when I've worked on like a lot of shoots back to back to back, sometimes I can be slightly creatively fatigued in some ways as well. And I don't know, like, I don't think that's necessarily going to be the problem moving out into the next stage at the moment. Have you found that you do get creatively fatigued, or have?
Oh, definitely. But by if you're near the end of a 12-hour shoot, and it's been a long day with a few breaks, and you've been constantly working. By the end of the day, you get into factory mode and think, I just want to get this shot done, and your creativity goes, which is terrible. But that's in a way that's the job, because if time is money, and people there who who want to get done and be released, and so yes, tiredness is the worst enemy of creativity.
Do you find it's more mentally straining or physically straining? Because I know, depending on, again, this will probably, I think, from my side at least, depend on what you're shooting, on what, how much running, quote unquote, running around is there, as well. I think will obviously be factored in that. But it'd just be interesting to hear from your side whether you find yourself as a camera operator actually struggling physically at the end of a 12-hour shoot, for example, or towards the end of a 12-hour shoot, or is it the creative aspects of it that you actually struggle with more?
I would say at the time it's mentally, and as soon as you stop, then you're exhausted. But the buzz is still there when you're actually filming, because it's the challenge, and you want to beat the challenge. But obviously, mentally, you're not as good as you are first thing in the morning. You do, it does wear you down. But physically, as I say, I don't really feel the physical side of it until I've stopped, and I'm dead. But then you think, well, I've still got 2 hours tidying up my stuff.
Yeah. Do you think that it's kind of because I definitely see a very difference between the team that I work with. So that might be like remotely, in the respect to if I'm bringing in a remote editor or etc., or if it's not just me doing it, or even it's just me and the client, depending on smaller budgets. But do you find that there's a very big difference in respect to the team overall morale, and why that is important on a film set specifically, to in the product at the end of the day?
I've always been very lucky and worked with fantastic people that are totally committed to whatever we're doing. So the buzz, the morale is really high, and I've been lucky enough that it's always been a really good atmosphere on set, and we've enjoyed it. We've all worked hard, and we've all had a good time, although physically and mentally draining. But all those things are very important. I think having a happy set makes such a big difference.
Mhm. No, definitely. I think it's really important to, I mean, maybe you've had situations where certain people aren't necessarily like feeling it at the time, but they kind of get pulled up by the rest of the people who are around the project, or on the project, or in that respect. So everyone kind of keeps everyone on the same level, if that makes sense. I think that's really, really important as well for people to know, because a lot of the people that I work with, they are used to working on their own. I think that's fine, but I think there's a definite transition between working on it with a very small crew, e.g. 1 or 2, up to closer to what you're working with, which I imagine is up from 5 up, in that respect.
Well, being independent, it's not always massive masses of crew, because it costs money. But you got to feed them. You got to pay their expenses and everything else. So it can be very limited. The director could end up holding the boom mic. It can be as small as that. But most actors are born show offs, and like and they bounce off each other. They bounce off their energy, and also you feed off that energy. And having a certain amount of humour on set is very important, because that relieves the stress when things go wrong. You can laugh about it and then get on with the job. So all those things are very important.
No, definitely. I think that there's kind of in some ways it can be difficult at times. Do you find, like, say for example, you just come off a short film that you need to take time away before you start editing it, or before you start looking at it, if you're going to be the one editing it?
I'll be honest with you. I everything I shoot, I when I come to look at it I dread looking at it, because I see all the mistakes and all the things I should have done, and so for that reason I don't like editing. and also editing just takes your life away. But sometimes you have to do it, and but yeah. So it usually takes me a little while to come round to editing something because I'm almost scared of seeing what I've produced. But once I get into it, I'm okay, and you think of ways of getting around different problems. Maybe you had a bit of problems with the sound or the lighting or anything. But with the great editing tools you got these days, they're such a big help.
No, definitely. I think there's some projects, like for me anyway, that are definitely ones that I would, want to take my time on the edit on, or want to take a break from, so to speak. So for example, I'll shoot half of it, and then it will sit and then the footage will sit there on my hard drive for however long, and then I'll come to edit it, maybe 2 weeks later, or 3 weeks later, in that respect. And I think that's important for some projects that, especially longer form, or that are very designed to be very powerful, because I think if you try to rush those out, you'll sometimes miss the emphasis on where and how and why. Especially, I think something that I wanted to talk to you about was the role that music choice plays, and how important music choice is, because I don't know whether you would agree, but I think that music can make or break a film in the respect to why the music's there, when the music's there, how then the sound effects work with the music, if you're adding sound effects, why you're adding sound effects, etc. So could you briefly talk about firstly why, firstly, how do you choose your music, if you choose your music yourself, and then also what role you feel music actually plays in an overall film?
Sound is everything. Sound is more important than the video, than the film itself. People can put up with bad picture quality, but they can't stand bad sound. And music is so emotive. It's so important. I spend days listening to loads of different music. I have a sense of what I want, the feeling I want to portray, and so I go then in search of that sort of music. But that can take me ages, and then I can edit something to fit with that music, and then decide, you know what, that's not really telling me the story I want, and have to scrap all that and start again. But I feel there's very little compromise on doing that because it's so important. And it's everything. Sound is everything to a film or to any project, I think.
Do you find that you end up choosing the music, or is that the client, or how? Because I think it's interesting to hear from your side, at least, how that kind of, because some projects I'll choose the music for example. Other projects I'll ask the client to choose some songs that then I choose one from. How do you go about navigating that from a logistical point of view?
Well, to be honest, I do ask them, but if I feel that there's perhaps a better choice, I would suggest that to them as well, and maybe show them their music choice, and then maybe say, "Oh, this is an alternative, and I'll put it to this music." And I've found that my choice has usually prevailed.
No, definitely. I think it's just about going back to what we were briefly talking about earlier about expecting expectations, and being transparent with the client overall. I think is really important, because there's obviously a reason why they're coming to you and why they're hiring you, right? So that will be probably simply because they want your expertise on how to create this product, or this film, or this commercial, or this promotional video, whatever it may be. So I think that having that dialogue about music, especially of how we've just gone over how important it actually is really, really important. As well, do you use sound effects that you don't necessarily film from set often, or do you find that you can normally sufficient with the amount of sound that you have from set?
I usually add sound effects where required. but obviously you need to be subtle with them. Picking up the Foley on set is something I'd love to be able to do, but it's not always possible because obviously getting the speech is more important. So of adding the effects afterwards in edit, so you can balance the two correctly. So that's what I tend to do. It's it's a big bag really, because there's loads of different scenarios where you would use.
No, of course, but would you recommend that outside of the dialogue scenes, for example, that you still run audio on those scenes to possibly give you assets to then you can then add into an edit afterwards, or you can then use in that respect? Because I find that the more I've done filmmaking, the more I've understood how sound design is important, but also a lot of my projects are fast turnaround. So my middle ground in that is because I may not have the time to fine tune a specific sound effect or specifically add a sound effect in. I may add a couple, but I find that just recording usable audio when I'm shooting. So, for example, if it's something simple like someone's scraping something or hammering something or etc., I'll try and get that on set. Now, obviously, that's in a different kind of scenario to dialogue and dialogue scenes, of course, but I think it's still, like, for example, when you're recording B-roll, for example, that plan to go over an interview, do you normally, because I know some filmmakers will deliberately not film audio because they don't want to deal with all the audio problems that may happen moving forward, or specifically, during that production?
All the independent productions I've been on, we've concentrated on trying to capture as good a sound of the audio of the speech, and added the required background noises, because there has been very little time or limited crew to do that. It'd be fantastic to always have a sound guy with you. You can do all that stuff and capture all that and produce the labeled up audio files, so you can do that. But that's not always possible.
Yeah, no, definitely. Especially I think as you're working with a small crew, some of the time you as a videographer or a camera operator, you end up being the sound guy as well. In that respect. Not necessarily the person holding the boom pole, but you end up kind of navigating what sounds are important, what do we focus on capturing here. For example, as you were talking about dialogue, in that respect, those I would argue are really important performances that you need to make sure you get the audio correct, and also they can't exactly be redone in the same way.
I find it. I don't like being in charge of the sound. Sometimes there's no other option, because when you're filming, you're so intense on the lighting and capturing and framing up and capturing that frame and the movement and everything else. And then if you're trying to still listen to the sound as well, it's something's going to lose out. So although I usually do record sound via my camera, I do like to have a separate boom operator with headphones who is capturing that.
No, definitely. I think that's really important. I think that's one of the first steps that I would say for any, indie films or just a bunch of people who are interested in creating films. Really kind of build out a team. This might be like, oh, you just left college and you want to create a film, or etc. Like across the summer, for example. Okay, well, when deciding to do that, get someone to just do sound, get someone to just do camera, get someone just to direct, get a handful of people just to act, and then when you do another short film, flip it around. So the person who did directing last time is actually now a camera operator, and etc. I think that's really important to learn, especially when you're obviously not at the level that we're talking about for most of this podcast. But I think when you're exactly at a level of where you're just messing around, just trying to create films, and just have fun with it, you know. Not saying by no means that when you are at a high level that you're not going to have fun with it. Of course you are, but when you're at a lower level, you don't necessarily know what you really, really want to do in the respect to what role you specifically really, really want to fill. Did you know that you really wanted to be a camera operator? If that was the chosen role that you really, really wanted to do, and if it wasn't, do you think there's going to be opportunities where you'll be able to go into the other roles of a
Um,
film crew?
I love creating. I love being behind the camera, and then sort of moving on to being like a director of photography. I really enjoyed that, and I also enjoy directing as well. I've been fortunate enough to actually do some of that in some projects, and I've really enjoyed that side of thing. But touching on what you were saying about getting a crew together, um, I think that's a great idea. What you said. I mean, if everyone has a little turn at each other, then they appreciate what the other person's looking for. At the end of the day, to produce something really good. But if you get someone, if you're lucky enough and find someone who's passionate about sound, embrace them because that's a jewel in the crown.
No, definitely. I think that's definitely something really important. But I think very early on, I mean, going back to what you said earlier about networking, especially if you have done a more traditional route of um, learning filmmaking and picking it up in that respect, you went to film school, or you went to college, or you went to this, you went to that. You'll build those connections passively within your class, within your group, within your team. So stay connected with those people, and you work with them outside of college, or even on college projects. Try to, as I say, do different roles, because then exactly what you were just building off what you were saying as well. For example, if you know what a camera operator has to do, you're more empathetic
Yeah.
with them as a director, like when you're a director, but in the same way, role switch as well. Um, have you so if you could only do one role for the rest of your career, what role would you choose on a film set?
Mm. Well, if I chose today, it would be being a DOP.
For those who don't know, do you mind just explaining what that role firstly is, and then secondly what it kind of is in charge of, and that kind of thing?
Basically, it's a director of photography. So what you're trying to do is understand the scene and try to capture that the most effective way possible to either to capture the fast paced action or to capture that really sensitive sideways look or something like that. So you really got to understand the scene and then put your camera movement and framing into place. And then we come into lighting as well. Another very important part of filming. Finding somebody who's fantastic at lighting would be fantastic. But experiment with your lighting and to create that feeling.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. I think that it's important to, especially when you're looking to do a narrative piece, it's that's why I think on narrative pieces you have specific people who are just in charge of specific elements of it, because there's so many different elements that need to go really, really well. As I say, it's one of those things where, yeah, you may be able to do like 6 different takes, but they're never going to be, the performance will never be identical in the respect to, yeah, the lines will be said the same, right? The lines will be the same, but they won't necessarily be executed in the same way every time. And I think that's, something very important to understand, firstly. And secondly, also then build off. So you have that team, whether that's a team that you specifically help put together or whether you're just part of that team, depending. Was there anything else that you wanted to cover, talk about
Oh yeah,
during this podcast?
networking is very important. As I keep on saying, you need to find these fantastically creative people who are great at makeup, who you can trust. It's a lot of trust as well because if you're producing something, you need to know that that team is going to turn up and deliver and be able to work together. That is so very, very important. And there's no real big personalities or someone who's going to stand there and say, well, I'm the director. I don't have to go and get you a cup of coffee. It's all in the level I'm at. You are a team, and you have to work as a team. You want to be prepared to muck in to get the job done. But that's a great atmosphere to work in, because you are all trying to produce the same thing, which is the best you possibly can.
No, definitely. I think there's still going to be times though where there might be butted heads. So if you found there is any times where there might be a disagreement or there might be some tension.
Yes, I mean, like the Rad Brown, who's the director of Hard Road Films, he has an idea in his head, and I have an idea in my head of how something's going to be captured, and and you discuss sometimes heatedly how it's going to be done. Then you learn how to work with someone. You say, well, hold on a minute, let's do it your way. If there's time, we'll do it my way as well. We'll see which one turns out in edit. Be prepared. So compromise. It's a big thing in life, really, isn't it? No matter what you're talking about, compromise with people. People are passionate about what they're doing, and always be open-minded. Listen to what other people have got to say. Actors sometimes see things from a different perspective to you, and they say, "John, how about if we do it this way?" And you think, "Wow, why didn't I think of that?" Be open, take on suggestions, and run with it, because it might be the best thing since sliced bread.
No, I think that's what I was going to suggest as well. I think that it's not necessarily a bad thing when other ideas are thrown out, or other shot ideas are, or etc. Really put into that kind of melting pot of creativity that I think overall is what a film is. In that respect, and I think that's good from whatever role you have on a film set, from whether it's a 5-man crew, a 3-man crew, or 1-man crew, whatever. I think it's really important to, and also just from them working with a client perspective, if it's more a business promotional video or whatever it may be, also hearing their ideas and seeing how you can kind of work their ideas into specifically the project you're doing. So it might not necessarily be, what they say in how they went about doing it, in the respect to, oh, we could do, or what do you think about us doing it this way? And then you can then, especially from a business perspective, you can explain, well, I love the idea, but here's why your idea is not maybe optimal, but here's the solution in a different way, or a different angle, or etc., to still allow you to get that shot in the edit. But this is how it will, I think it's partly as your job as a videographer, is to kind of be able to navigate that and say, well, I love that idea, but here's why that would be problematic right now. Like, for example, I love this lighting scene, but I actually want to try something completely different. Okay, well, we've only got an hour with this person, right? And it's going to take an hour to change the lighting. So, love that idea, but at the moment it's impractical, for example. Have you found that there is like kind of this in some ways unsaid rule, I guess, in some ways, is like, once a decision is kind of finalized, quote unquote, it can't be tweaked? Or have you found there's ways to sometimes still have that open communication, not necessarily on set, but in the pre-production stages and etc. as well?
Whatever film I've ever done, there's never ever been enough time. That's your biggest enemy. You're always up against it. There's 101 reasons why time is so constrained. So planning is everything. Although when you actually get to the location, everything usually changes, because it's not, as the light's different. There's loads of noise, or whatever reason. So once again, compromise has got to be top, and problem solving. You've got to be quick with your problem solving, and sometimes you've just got to go for it. You can't dither around. You've got to get in there and do something now. Otherwise, nothing will happen. You can procrastinate all day long and get nothing, wasted nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think that's really important to, especially as I found as I've gone further in my career as well. It's been more of a kind of right, okay, that didn't quite work out. How do we fix this problem, right? Instead of, oh, we got this massive problem, whatever. How do we go around it? How can we still move forward with the production or with the shot or whatever, whatever the problem is. In that respect, how do we still make an artistic choice here, or how do we still help the product exist in the best quality we can do it at with the restrictions of whatever the problem may be. In that respect, I think that's really, really important to firstly understand, and secondly then develop that skill set as you go through your career. The more film productions you're on, the more you'll realize from behind the scenes perspective, the final edit might look really, really clean and really, really lovely, but actually in reality, half of the final edit actually is probably just you having to fix problems, so it wasn't actually what was on the storyboard or wasn't on the pre-production plan, in that respect, because it didn't actually happen. Like, for example, we couldn't do that shot because XYZ, so we had to do this shot that then had to reconnect to a different shot, and etc. In that respect, those who may be interested in seeing some of your work or talking to you more about possibly coming on a shoot or etc., where can people find you, and then how is best to contact you?
Just Floppy Dog Films. So it's www.floppydogfilms. That's about the best way, or email me, or even on Facebook.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. I think that's everything I wanted to cover. So unless there's anything else that you want to talk about, want to bring up, want to go over, then I'm
always interested in networking and working with talented people.
No, definitely. I think that's really, really important. As you said before, I think it's about kind of building that network of people and really kind of also a set of people that are open to compromise, as you said as well, but also that can help you problem solve, right? Because there's no, and aren't going to go, well, oh, this is your fault, right? For example, because that doesn't necessarily, it might be my fault, but that's not going to help the problem be fixed, right? We can talk about whose fault it is afterwards, but at the moment we've got only a certain amount of time to do the thing we need to do, so let's just find the solution to the problem, right? And I think that's very, very important.
Yes, 100%.
Thank you so much, guys, for joining us on this interview. I hope you took value from mine and John's conversation. If you did enjoy this episode and took value from it, as I said in the start, it would be great to have you come aboard and subscribe to the channel. I really, really love seeing this channel grow, and it's been very, really great, and I really, really appreciate the guys and girls who have been supporting the channel lately. But next week, I'll have a brand new interview for you. It's going to be a very, very special interview with a lovely gentleman called Tommy Gentleman, conveniently enough, but we're going to be interviewing him and talking about his new digital marketing agency, and also who he is, and what he is, kind of the challenges he has kind of come into, or have happened to him in his life, and how he's overcome them, should I say. So I cannot wait to share that with you next week at 6 p.m. on Monday. So thank you so much for watching, guys, and I look forward to sharing another YouTube video with you on Wednesday at 6 p.m. as well. So thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you very, very soon.